Star Trek will not be presented tonight, so that we may bring you the following special program.
Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners. Welcome back, everybody. Time again for Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. I got a New York guy on, so I should do my Mel Allen. Hello again, everybody. Word Balloon, 1988. Dean Haspiel is joining me once again on Word Balloon. Dean, it's good to see you, my man.
Cheers, John. Good to see you. Thank you very much. And we got Biggie Smalls here. Biggie Smalls.
Oh, that's great.
On the glass here.
That's nice. Who drew that? Do you know who drew it?
No, you know what? Oh, you know what? It might be. Oh, you're right. It might. Let's take another look. It might be taken from a photo, but it does look drawn as well. So, but there's no signature or anything. So.
Okay. It almost looks like something that Drew Friedman would draw. You know, where that photorealistic kind of style of his and everything.
Totally.
Have you guys? I'm gonna go ahead. What were you gonna say?
You just ran the Alex Ross commercial, and it reminded me. I just read that Abrams Books that publishes Fantastic Four story, right? That they're doing another edition of it, but it's going to be like 200 pages more or something. And it's going to be like all behind the scenes. It's going to be a much fatter book, which is crazy. I guess it did well enough to yield that. It's also Alex Ross, right?
Sure.
And the one thing I've always loved once I first saw them were his initial pencils that he does are so brilliant and so beautiful. Almost Alex Toth-like, right? And I just wish he would just pencil comics, like in that instead of having to paint them. I love his painting too, but just pencil some comics. You don't even need to ink them; they're so beautiful.
Okay, because I was going to say, I always tell him I wish you'd do more interiors, and that's why I was so excited when the Abrams Fantastic Four book came out. And let's in the words of Robert De Niro, I'm hearing things. I hear things.
Oh my God. I just had a Robert De Niro dream last night or the night before. It was really elaborate. I know I usually don't remember my dreams, but for some reason I was hanging out with De Niro and I think I may have told you because of my godmother, Shelley Winters. He babysat me a few times when I couldn't remember that Robert De Niro or even had context for Robert.
Sure, of course. Yeah.
So anyway, so I had this dream the other night that we were hanging out, like current Robert De Niro, and I was like, Taxi Driver 2, you got to do a sequel, like, right? And
whatever happened to Travis Bickle?
And I said, what happened to? And so I said to him, what happened to Travis Bickle? And he said, he's 30 feet under a river right now. And I was like, Jesus, like what? Why is he 30 feet? And then I said to him, well, why? And he goes, I don't know. You tell me. Like, and he threw it back in my lap. So I was like thinking, oh, we got to call Paul Schrader, right? The guy who wrote Taxi Driver, right? And we got to get this going because, like, how did he end up in the river? And is he De Niro's age now? And did we tell the story what happened to Travis Bickle?
Wow.
To now, and why is he dead? Is it suicide? Is it murder? What is it? What happened? Why is he dead? And so we were playing this back and forth, this ping pong of like me saying to him, you got to do that. And he's like, I don't want to do this. You do it. Or you figure it out for me kind of a thing. So anyway, it was an interesting dream. I don't know why I thought. And then it just seems like, and yes, we know that if he did a sequel today, it could ruin the magic and beauty, of the original. And so, I mean, because it has to be really good in order to do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Didn't you think the first Joker movie, the Todd Phillips, I mean, I kept describing it as if you've never seen Taxi Driver, you're blown away. But if you had, it's like an amazing cover band that is doing a tremendous remake of Sunny, because it had that Taxi Driver tone to it.
And the other the King Comedy,
Yeah, well, absolutely,
Driver,
King Comedy.
King Comedy, right?
Yeah.
So, but I mean, my friend Shannon Goldman, who's a old pal of mine and a filmmaker, he calls it the Sistine Chapel of cinema, Taxi Driver, which I always love that description because it's true, but I don't know, man. I sometimes you just gotta leave things alone. I think it's because I'm a comic book guy and we're constantly adding sequels and prequels and bootlegs and this and that. But also if there is a story to tell and it's good. But speaking of Joker, you saw Joker 2.
Dean, I was hoping you maybe saw Joker 2. Go ahead and I'll comment.
I am so forgiving for most things that I watch and like I'm rooting for the movies all the time. This movie is bad. It's a bad movie. And Tarantino recently apparently said that he loved the movie because basically it's a fuck you to the fans, it's a fuck you to cinema, it's a fuck you to every like and I
I've
mean
heard that.
I don't know your feelings yet about the movie, but
I will tell you.
it's dead. They have no. To me, I thought they had no chemistry. Okay, the two of them. And
Really, him and Gaga. Really,
I didn't feel it. I didn't think that they were phoning in any performances or anything. I don't think it was like that kind of a thing. But there was some intentional. We're gonna maybe throw out, a line, to catch a fish, and then we're never gonna pull a fish out of the water. It's always gonna just kind of, to me, go where you think you want to go or hope for it to go. Even when they break out of Arkham Asylum, halfway through the movie, and then they go back inside. Like, where's Breakfast
That's
at Tiffany's adventure movie? And that's me talking as a fan, right? Like, it's not me to say how the movie should be written and directed or acted or anything, but I did want a lot more than what I got. Let's put it that way.
Well, I thought it was a continuation of the first movie, and I liked it from that standpoint. It's a nihilistic movie. It's so dark. It's so depressing. And it's interesting that Tarantino said that, and I've heard others say, oh, this is Todd Phillips, flipping off the fans, the nerds. And it's like, I didn't take it that way. And I don't know if he has said anything to that in any interviews about the movie, but I thought Gaga did a great job. I thought the music and the way they put music in the movie worked for me, both the fantasy scenes and them just singing to each other.
The structure of the film and the way they would use singing to talk to each other was there. I mean, it's all there, but it kept dying on the vine for me. I got bored.
I've heard other people say that as well.
These people, I was bored. And then, in fact, my problem with the first movie, ultimately, is that he finally gets on TV. He spoiler, shoots the TV host, De Niro. Hello. And now the cameras are all on him. And the whole movie, you're kind of waiting for him because they kind of suggest these comedy acts and you never really hear his jokes. And they suggest that he feels like he needs to say something, or what is it? And he says nothing. There is nothing to say. And I feel like, again, that was the commentary in the first movie from the filmmaker, was like, is he chaos? Is he nothing? Or do we build people up? And then when they're on the pedestal, they're just a human being that has that, do we ultimately have anything to say? I don't know. Maybe that's what the movie's about.
That's how I took his character, Arthur, and what Phillips was saying in both movies, that despite the crowd wanting him to be this agent of chaos.
Right.
And that's why I found it interesting. And actually, I'll tease, on Thursday, I'm talking to Elliot Maggin, who has a new novel about Lex Luthor. And I am very excited to read it and talk to him about it on Thursday night. But I think that's different. But that's the thing. And it was so interesting to hear people talk about Joker 2, movie critics, and those saying, well, this certainly doesn't lead to the Batman mythos. And it's like, no, it never intended to.
No, it never did. I knew that from the first movie, right? Like, this isn't the Joker, and somehow there's Joker adjacent, Batman adjacent, whatever you want to, and that's fine, whatever. And I was curious, this take, and there were some interesting things, but ultimately the second movie didn't add to me and didn't add any value to the first movie. That was my feeling,
Totally valid. No, totally valid, man. Again, I didn't find it boring. I found it intense. I thought all the character actors in it, Brendan Gleeson, Bill Smitrovich as the judge. I love that guy. He is one of my favorite character actors, and you won't know him by name, folks, but you'll see him and go, "Oh yeah, it's that guy. Hey, that's
That
awesome.
guy.
He's still
Yeah.
around," because he's been doing it at least since the 80s and 90s.
Right.
And yeah. So, but everybody, also Kathleen Kennedy, wasn't it Kathleen Kennedy playing his defense attorney?
I think so. The movie kind of evaporated as I was watching it for some reason to me. And even though, like, even with the weird little kind of like, oh, we're gonna tease that maybe a Joker is born from the death of this, whatever.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, that's fine, but like, why? Like, okay.
Well, I understand, and it's fair to assume that maybe that character will eventually or would have eventually become the Joker. But I think Phillips, despite using Joker as an idea for these two movies, I think the whole time it tried to stay as grounded as in reality as you can, despite having Arkham Asylum, despite having a Wayne Tower as he's driving in from Arkham to court, and you pass Wayne Tower, and even the brief appearance of Thomas and Bruce in the first movie. It's like, no, this is a real world story. Those kind of myths don't happen. And if anything, like I said, that Arthur's character is flies in the face of this man, this chaos agent will be our next leader. And it's like, no, man, I'm just a dumb schmuck that has got mental problems.
Absolutely.
And
if that's the takeaway, again, we didn't need two movies to tell the same basic takeaway.
Well, tell that to the studio that had this monster hit that I don't think they were expecting. And I'm sure
they did do well, right?
The first one did. The first one did.
Right. The second
and
one
that's what I'm saying. So Warner's backs up the truck and also, again, I get that the second movie is not for everybody. I give Todd Phillips a hell of a lot of credit because there's a guy that mostly was known for comedy, the Hangover movies and things like that. And I really think these two movies are saying something. Now, I don't know what the studio reaction of, hey, all right, what do you got next for us, Todd? Given that this second movie took a bath. Because it is a $200 million flop, and those don't play well in most studio circles, as you know from your entertainment experience.
Oh, yeah.
Not that you've had a $200 million flop, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I pray to someday have that. But
you get paid, you get to have fun making it. So
exactly. Have fun making it, and I mean that's the nihilistic part. Like, did the creator, the filmmakers, intend to piss people off or to critique, the idea of? I wonder, but even more so, forget that. That's cool. Fine. That's your movie, right? That's what you want to make. I am shocked and surprised that DC let that movie out then because of that. Does that make sense?
Well, again, because of the success of the first movie, and I would imagine before it came out, it's so funny, Dean. I had more, and it wasn't even hidden knowledge, but like when Ed Norton split away from that Hulk movie, or at least there were problems as they were making it and stuff.
Right.
I remember talking to Casada when the movie was coming out, and it was just kind of this matter of fact, yeah, we got a Hulk movie coming out. But let me tell you about what's coming after that. And it's like, okay, something's going on where clearly the studio and something happened. And I didn't know what it was. And then we found out that Norton wanted more control and didn't want to, basically follow the Kevin Feige plan for these Marvel movies in certain ways. So that's why they kind of not disowned it, but we're like, all right, here it is. Whatever. If you like it, great. If you don't, no big deal. We got so much else coming up.
And going back quickly to Joaquin Phoenix and Joker.
Yeah.
He made a movie 6 years ago, maybe. That was an adaptation of Jonathan Ames's You Were Never Really Here. And I forget the name of the female director, and it's awesome, this movie. And I would hazard that this movie is Joaquin's Batman in terms of realistic terms. I don't know if you saw the movie or not. It's really good.
I have not seen the movie. No, I didn't know that it was based on Jonathan's.
Stuff.
Yeah.
He wrote a novella, and which are really good for movies because they're not like giant, 500-page books. They're more
Sure.
like 120, 200 maybe page,
Yeah. Yeah.
and a lot of short stories work well for movies anyway. So, and she took a lot of liberty, the filmmaker whose name escapes me, sorry. But it's such a good film that I would watch it tonight if I were you. So check it out. It's really
How
good. So again, it's like his Batman to this Joker.
interesting.
Joaquin.
How is Jonathan? I haven't talked to him since The Alcoholic, the
Oh my
graphic
God,
novel you guys did. Yeah.
that's a while ago. He's
I know,
doing
man.
great.
That was like 15 years ago or so.
No, he's doing really well.
Good.
He's in California. He inched closer to the Hollywood sign, I think, technically up a hill somewhere. I
Meta-
don't know the neighborhood.
in
Uh,
reality, not metaphorically. Okay.
in reality, and
Okay.
that was his third crime noir book. He has a series now called A Man Named Doll, Doll, and the first one was really good. The second one's great, and the third one I think is coming out fairly soon in a couple of months. And so he's gone back to writing, but to kind of like his first love, because the guy wrote a lot of memoir stuff, and then did Bored to Death, and then Blunt Talk with
Blunt
Patrick
Talk.
Stewart.
Absolutely. Yes.
And so he's done some TV shows, and I think he's still kind of like maybe navigating those waters still somewhat. But even he would admit, even though we did a graphic novel together, and he's collaborated with like giant, actors and stars and directors in Hollywood, there's nothing like that blank piece of paper that you can control and just write a story
Oh,
on.
sure.
So
Absolutely.
I think he loves it.
I was speaking to Emma Rios this afternoon. She's got her graphic novel coming out on
Oh,
Wednesday.
cool.
And she said the same thing. She's like, comics is so there's no she goes even and especially this new graphic novel that she made. She's like, I didn't have to listen to a publisher telling me no, we don't want to publish that. She goes, it's just me, the pencil, the paper, and my imagination, and I was able to do it.
And I will say, like, I do think there's a huge value to working with a really good editor and really good collaborators and publishers and whatnot. And
Sure.
then sometimes, sometimes you get a little older and you're like, wait, a child is telling me what to do? I mean, and I'm not saying that they don't have value as well,
No, but
or
yeah,
I'm waiting in line for their phone call or the email response or whatever. And I just know that days of old seem to have not trickled down in terms of how things can operate in certain ways.
no, I hear you. Well, again, man, you cut your teeth during the Archie Goodwin editing era when a guy had experience writing or drawing. I mean, right now the EC guy from Joe Orlando, another wonderful artist from the 50s and 60s that by the 70s was editing at DC and everything. So they can speak from experience.
Joe Orlando actually advised me and did, I believe, some touch-ups on the second bonus book comic I drew, which was a Booster Gold Blue Beetle story. I forget who wrote it. I was just like the pencil. Oh, it was the pencil and the inker. And the tragedy of that story is I penciled it. And back then I felt okay enough about it. I was like, now I look at it and it's a horror show, of course, whatever. But I penciled it. I fell off the library roof at college, broke both my legs, my lower back, and my right drawing hand. I'm in a wheelchair trying to ink with a brace on my hand.
Oh my God.
Pencils. And then Joe had to make some touch-ups. Let's just put it that way. Okay. And it's out there and it's horrific. But I did have this experience with Joe. And then I thought, oh, my career is over. I'm never working DC Comics again. And I didn't for a long time. And I think I was like 20 or 19 or 20. No, I was 21. I was 21 when that happened. And yeah, that was not good.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, that's stunning, man. No, truly, that is stunning. You know what I did here, and I'll tell you after we're off the air. But and you may already likely know this, but a good veteran creator has been hired by one of the big two to train younger editors, and it's like when they put out a story. What's that? Today?
Currently? Oh,
currently. I mean, okay. And I would assume at least like within the last 5 years or so that this was the process to train these younger editors how to work with creators and give more, better valuable information
It's not easy. I mean, it can't be easy because you're dealing with. I mean, I've stated from the beginning, comics is the most unprofessional profession I've ever worked in. Okay, and you're dealing with so much arrested development and children, including myself. Okay, uh, and so many different personalities, and some people are more professional than others, and some are better communicators. And then you can see it in the artwork or the storytelling. Some people kind of get away with being a prima donna or not, whatever. But yeah, I I think it's always helpful to bring some of the older, tried and true ways of communicating and establishing and managing expectations, right?
Yeah. No, I hear you, man. God, this is I love that we started this way, Dean, because we of course also want to talk about your Kickstarter campaign that's underway with a great concept. This is so Dean Haspiel. Everybody, meet Chest Face. I love it, man. I
Thank
love
you.
it. So this
Thank
is, as you described it, a noir story, a noir superhero story. This is our
Yeah,
hero,
yeah.
a former stand-up or a still participating stand-up.
So the loose kind of idea is that he is a stand-up comedian, okay, struggling newbie, not established or anything, and he's working on his first comedy hour, and he is kind of broke. And what you find out is that he had basically gone to give blood so he could eat, right? But while giving blood at a place, he got kidnapped by this evil corporation. That's basically, and I'm using some kind of old tropes, right? That's using some kind of science to mutate people to become like a superhero that they can control for their company for whatever reasons. But they've been turning into monsters like him. Like in his case, his face got put onto his chest, and he looks like a cross between the Thing and oh god, what's his name?
Modoc.
Moda. No. Arnim Zola, right? Arnim
Sure.
Zola,
Sure.
and Gossamer from Bugs Bunny. Remember Gossamer, the big pink
Yes. Yeah,
kind of
the
monster,
hairy
the
the hairy
furry monster,
monster.
the hairy monster.
People.
That's
Sure.
right. That's right. So he turned into that, and they were like they're trying, and they've been experimenting on other men as well, and trying to trash them, right? But he escaped, and in his escape, he's trying to do 5-minute sets to work on his comedy act, and getting shot at and on the run. And then we meet a female hero that was the successful version of There We Go, and her name is Meridian Prime. Okay, I don't want to give too much away, but part of the commentary is it took female chromosomes to make the kind of hero that they need. But whether or not she's an ally to the evil corporations or for another reason, that's part of the story. So I had written and drawn a 6-page story that I believe I sent you, and that first appeared in what do you call it? Spider Squirrel and Trash Panda Titan Size Special, published by Charlie McElvey of Zion Studios, and that was tucked in there, nice and neat. And then I was just thinking about it. I was like, I want to know more about this character. Like, who is this guy, and what's his story? And because I kind of had written it in a first person noir, and I had fun doing that. I wanted to continue experimenting with that as well, and the limited color palette. Part of what I love to do is just to keep it bare bones if I can. Even though I tend to get a little elaborate in my ideas and a little far fetched, which is the fun of comics and movies and television and stories, right?
Sure.
Um, and then someone was asking me recently, like, where'd you get this idea? And I can't remember if I drew him first or I came up with the name first. And then I just laughed. I thought it was so funny. And then I realized, oh, he's a stand-up comedian. You know? Now, I don't think I could write a joke to save my life. And I know comedians. And so I've had some comedian friends already writing jokes for this guy.
Oh,
So
funny.
as part of my one of my reward tiers on my campaign is a Zoom party, and I'm going to have a couple comedians on there, and one of them definitely is going to be telling chest face jokes, which is pretty
Hilarious.
cool. So
That's
that'll be a lot.
fantastic, man. That's a great
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
idea.
So who are your
Wonderful.
favorite comedians? Who are your favorite
Oh God.
old school and mod? Do you listen
Sure.
to any new guys?
Oh, of course. Of course. Well, I'm trying to think if there is anybody really new because everyone I'm going to mention is established. Longtime Chappelle fan.
Right.
It's so funny, this image of Chestface, I assumed, I'm like, oh, he's got a set at the Cellar. So,
Yeah, right,
great New
Priscilla,
York
totally.
Comedy Club.
Yep,
Absolutely. But,
yep.
being from Chicago, the home of improvisational comedy, the birthplace of Second City, and, even the great Nichols and May of the 50s
Yep.
started here in Chicago before they blew up in New York and everything.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but yeah, I mean, I had the pleasure of meeting Don Rickles and
What?
and he came to our sports station. He was in Chicago for a long period of time. Good friends with my buddy Mike North, and got to see him perform several times. And he was really nice to me, and I even got to screw around with him. Also, the great Shecky Green came in
Oh my
studio,
gosh,
and
Green.
he
Wow.
and I had a lot of fun swapping jokes, which is amazing.
Right.
But my guys, I'll admit it, even though he's been canceled, Bill Cosby was a big comedy
Yep.
hero of mine, although
Yep.
very sad to learn about his
Yep.
personal life and how much of a creep he was. That's
Yep.
massively disappointing. So, those are the classics. But yeah, I had the comedy albums when I was a kid. Stan Freberg, excellent comedian of the 50s and 60s, and a forgotten name. I actually met him at Comic-Con.
What?
Yeah, he did a Comic-Con. It was so cute, Dean. His panel was before the HBO True Blood panel, and his wife Hunter was with him, and she's like, listen, and she was so cute. They're in one of the bigger rooms, and she's like, listen, I know a lot of you are here waiting for the True Blood panel next.
Right.
Let me tell you about my husband Stan. And she's like, he played the gopher in Lady and the Tramp, and all these women went, "Aw!" And he's, he was a big cartoon voice for Warner Brothers during the Mel
Right.
Blanc era. He was another cartoon voice, and a great satirist and stuff. And also he made very funny commercials. He made, if you remember when we were kids, that Gino's pizza roll commercial with the Lone Ranger.
Yeah.
That was one of his commercials. Just a
Wow.
fantastic guy.
Wow.
So I made a lot of humorous commercials in Chicago radio. And I'm like, Stan, you were like, totally an inspiration to me. And I'm like, I could never come near what you did. I said, but you were always in my mind when I try to write a funny commercial.
Oh,
could not have
so
been nicer. Brilliant man.
That's so
I'm a massive comedy nerd, and Bill Burr. I love Bill Burr.
I was gonna say Bill Burr's on my list. I
Gaffigan.
like who?
Gaffigan, Jim Gaffigan, big fan.
Gaffigan. I actually like Doug Stanhope. Might be my favorite right now. Or
I like Doug.
I've seen him a few times, and he is just next level in some ways, and he's a particular taste. The late great Patrice O'Neill. I don't remember if you ever listened to.
Oh,
Patrice
of course.
O'Neill.
Oh no, hilarious. Yeah.
You know?
Well, in the 90s, when he'd show up on Colin Quinn's Tough Talk panel show, he was always hilarious.
Colin's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who else? Obviously, like the Bill Hicks, the George Carlins of the world.
Did you ever see Bill Hicks do stand up?
Not in real life, but on I've seen shows.
Sure.
Absolutely.
He came to Chicago, and I got to see him live once, and it was so great because there was a guy in the audience that hated him, and he's like, "I am your worst nightmare, aren't I, sir? You can't stand a word that I'm saying right now." And the guy just scowled at him as Hicks is just dressing him down. I was such a Bill. I feel very privileged. It's like seeing Lenny Bruce. It's like,
Absolutely.
oh no, I'd say with Patrice for that matter. I mean, it's these guys that aren't with us anymore. I loved I love Nick Diapol. Nick.
Oh yeah, the Italian. Yeah, or is it Greek? No, where is he? What is?
Oh,
he?
He's Italian. I'm pretty sure he's
Italian.
Yeah.
So no, I know what you're talking about, and obviously Patton Oswalt is
love Patton.
Such great albums he's done, and he's just always a funny guy. I mean, there's so many great comedians. I'm also a fan of Anthony Jeselnik, who is also a particular taste.
I like Jeselnik. I like his stuff.
He can be a little mean. But
I like Nikki Glaser. I like her. I think she's really funny.
Glaser's great. Who's the Asian woman? Oh God,
Ali Wong.
Oh, she's fantastic. She's another one.
Oh no, she's great. Oh no, really funny.
Sarah Silverman.
Saw Sarah Silverman live. Love Sarah Silverman.
Yep.
She's amazing. And I love Natasha Leggero.
I don't know if I've seen.
Oh, well, and forgive me, everybody, but I won't deny she's a very beautiful woman, but also she is a
Right.
very, very funny woman.
Right.
She made that when Dice had the most recent show that he had, I think it was on Showtime, Andrew Dice Clay, and she played his wife in that.
Oh,
and
okay.
It was called Dice.
Okay. All
and
right.
it was like,
he
it was kind of.
He became a really interesting actor.
I agree.
Andrew Dice Clay.
I agree.
What was it? Was it the Vinyl or the Deuce or something? Like,
yeah, it was Vinyl. It was Vinyl.
And he gets so intense I think it was like in one episode, and like he just commanded space in a way that I'd never seen him do before. It was really
no. I like him as an actor a lot better than I liked his stand up. I have to admit.
Yeah.
You know. But he's and I liked the TV show that he did, Dice. Like I said, it's kind of a fake behind the scenes, kind of like Curb with Larry David and everything. But yeah, no. But truly, man,
to give a quick shout out to a couple of my comedian friends. I got Chris Macker, who's AKA Big Business, and Matt Champagne, who also he kind of hosts co-hosts my Zoom parties. And Chris always shows up and does a 5-minute set on Zoom, which is one of the hardest things to do in the world. so I give them a shout out.
That's cool. You know, I've gotten to know Brian Volk Weiss, who's a great producer, and he's the guy behind, if you see stand-up specials and if you notice the production company, it's called Comedy Dynamics. And they've produced a lot of Gaffigan stuff. Brian cut a deal with Bill Hicks's mother and brother, who control the Hicks estate. And there was a lot of video footage and audio that had never been released before. And during COVID, they released a few Bill Hicks projects that were, unseen footage of him from the 80s and 90s. And they're great. And he also produced 2 really good documentaries about Bill as well. Right. But yeah, so I like talking stand up with Brian. He knows his stuff.
No, that's great. And actually, mutual pal Bob Fingerman also loves comedy and is always turning me on to people to stuff like that. See, I lean more toward drama and horror in my entertainment because I've found, and maybe this is a little hot take, a lot of comedies are not funny to me. I don't know why. Whenever I watch a comedy, it's like, it's okay. There's some whatever here. And I'm not stuck up. I'm not like, persnickety like that. It just, but I also love a good fart joke. I mean, so maybe that's where I'm leaning. Who knows? But I also like where people like to watch a comedy to laugh. I like to watch a horror to be scared. And even horror movies most of the time don't spook me, So it's very rare. In fact, we'll talk about the Lights Out thing shortly once we wrap up talking about Chestface. But in tackling Chestface and making him a stand-up comedian, it did occur to me that maybe I need to write some jokes, right? And I'm not going to spoil anything, but I don't know. I think the whole thing might be just one big joke, okay? And not like Joker, the movie, is a certain kind of joke. And I realized that through noir and through that, maybe if my version of Chestface would be that just telling your life story sometimes is funny. Or you can laugh at it because it can be so tragic or so sad that sometimes I'm watching something that's so sad I start laughing. Okay,
sure.
There was a writer. I did a reading recently with 4 or 5 other writers, and the last person that came up was this really cool female writer that had like a New York Times best-selling book, and she read the first chapter of her book that was so harrowing about the things that were dropping out of her body because of a procedure she had gone through. And it was so messed up that the audience were basically gasping or couldn't speak. I think someone left, or a couple people might have left because they couldn't handle what they were listening to. All I could do was laugh. and only because it was like a coping mechanism, I think, because it was so messed up,
Sure.
And I went up to her and I said, forget Viagra. Just read me the first chapter of this book. She started laughing.
That's cool.
That was my attempted humor.
Anyway. I listened to The Moth on National Public Radio when it plays here in Chicago, and I do appreciate that kind of spoken word performance. And totally. You're right, a lot of those are really tragedies, but again, they find a way to present them comedically. And
Because ultimately,
you know,
ultimately you're connecting. It's a human connection, and that's where drama, comedy, anything, romance, science fiction, even when you can make that human connection, is when you can lock in, and then you can do anything after that. And I
sure.
always said, like, to impart a serious message, it's it's best to do it through some sense of levity, if you can. If you can find the levity, then you can swallow that pill a little bit easier.
Well, it's funny when you were talking about your De Niro dream, and that you imagined, or when De Niro in your dream said that Travis Bickle is 30 feet under or whatever, it reminded me of the beginning of Sunset Boulevard,
Oh yeah,
fantastic early 50s movie that starts
yeah,
with Bill Holden drowned in the pool, and there
yep.
is kind of a cynical humor to, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm dead, and look what happened to me, and let me tell you how I got here,
Let me tell
essentially.
you, I got here, and you're like, at first, you're like, it's an interesting, not trick, but structural thing, because you don't necessarily care about the person dying or dead because you haven't met the person.
Right.
And the whole story is to try to get you to the place where maybe you care,
Yep.
even though you know their fate. And then, of course, it tells this gigantic story. In fact, isn't that like a giant musical right now with the lead singer
Yes.
from the Pussycat Dolls apparently is owning Broadway right now with how
Oh no, you know New
amazing.
York better than me, but I know it has been a musical before. I know Glenn Close played the Norma Desmond part in a musical version of it,
Oh
at the
yeah,
very least in England, if not on Broadway.
right. Well,
So
this
yeah,
this new version, and I don't remember her name. I want to say it's like Schlesinger or something, but uh, I remember for the Pussycat Dolls, and then suddenly she's transitioned into this, like taking this giant role, and apparently is killing it.
that's awesome.
And I'm really excited. I would love to be able to afford a ticket.
I hear,
To go
oh
see
buddy,
it.
I hear you. Good Lord, I hear you. I know it's funny. My working class actor friends in New York are in Actors Equity, so that's how they can get in and still
Yep.
see great shows and everything. Yeah, yeah. But honestly, I love what you sent me for Chess Face. I
Oh,
think it's a
thanks.
great start. Um, Dean, are these characters? Because I think too, and forgive me, what was the name of your hero in the last time we spoke? The COVID.
Oh, the Red Hook,
Well, there's the
or
Red Hook as well, but
there's
then
Billy
also the COVID
Dogma,
and Billy.
Billy Dogma and Jane Legit, and COVID Cop. COVID
And
Cop.
COVID Cop. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So would we ever see one day the Haspiel verse, the Brooklyn verse come together, and this kind of Erstat's Justice League, maybe
Or my Fantastic Four could be Billy Dogma, Jane Legit, the Red Hook, and Chestface, right?
yes,
Uh,
yes,
um, it's funny you should say that, because I was not thinking that, because when I do my Kickstarters, I kind of was thinking in terms of albums, which is odd. So, like,
not
Prince
at
is one of
all.
my favorite. Prince is one of my favorite, musicians, singers, songwriters of all time. Big time influence on everything about me. We and I was thinking, like, oh, so he comes out in 1999, and then Purple Rain, and everyone wants Purple Rain 2, but then he comes out with Around the World in a Day, which is completely different from Purple Rain, and then he does Love Sexy. The Black Album drops off, a truck, and then it's Sign of the Times. Or I might have been out of order, and he had so many albums, and I followed his career. Uh, all the time, and I get all the stuff that from the vault here and there. I love it all, right? But he had a good decade or so of, like, fantastic albums. But even though they sounded like Prince or Prince of the Revolution or whoever he was working with, they were all very Prince oriented. But, like, the albums were also different projects, right?
Absolutely,
So I
absolutely.
think about my Dean Haspiel deep cuts, these Kickstarter comics, as being project oriented. Like, hopefully people who dig my wares will be like, oh, I want to know what Dean's doing next, whatever it is. Like, I don't
Sure,
know if I'm selling genres well enough, or am I just selling Dean, um and so and in a way, I think people are supporting me to keep doing what I do. And I could use a lot more, to be
sure,
frank, because it's
sure.
really expensive to live in Brooklyn, just to eat a peanut butter sandwich and live in Brooklyn, like,
Yeah,
but that's not anybody else's problem. I'm just hoping people are turned on and want my next quote album. But with that, in regard to your question, um, I did write the second COVID Cop story, and I actually have 3 planned, and I could go a 4th. But I feel like the graphic novel might be the 3 stories put together. And in that, I do have a couple of characters from my other deep cut comics that kind of make it in this future story that I'm doing with COVID Cop, which takes place 10 years from now. So I've kind of inserted some, and then now with Chestface, maybe, but that would just be sprinkling in, going, oh, elbowing and hip checking, certain characters, right? Uh, would I ever tell a story where they kind of congregate and I tell that tale? Hey, I'm a creator. I can make anything happen.
I envision Billy Dogma being like the Batman of that super group, should they ever get together. I don't know, and probably because he was the first guy that I really took notice of
Right.
your recurring characters.
Right,
But
right.
no, I love it, man. And yeah, that's great. And I listen, I mean, we've had these conversations. I love COVID Cop. I love the Red Hook.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely, man. No, hey man, you're much like Prince himself. You've got a unique voice, and I'm really glad that you're out there and doing your thing. And I'm glad that you're cultivating this audience that hopefully will come back for more, and they won't be disappointed, because Chestface faces it's a great, interesting idea. It's a great story. There's humor. I mean, good Lord, you look at him, that you can't help but find humor in it. And plus,
I mean, you look at him, right? Like,
yeah.
And that's, to me, is where it locked in. And I don't know, man. I feel like I've always skirted the sidelines, and I was never good enough for prime time, but I mean, I was too indie for the mainstream, but too mainstream for the indie world, and like, I feel like the more we do, the more the industry expands, and the more we have these tools where we can self-publish or we can experiment. Like, I guarantee I sent COVID Cop to 10 different publishers, and the good news was I got positive responses, but they also were like, we could never publish this, right? And I understood that. I didn't even try that with Chestface, except when I went to Charlie McKelvey of Zion Studios, and he loved it. And I was like, okay, well, let me test the waters here. Let me just try this out. The first 6 pages, see what happens. And then, because I'm now trying to figure out, like, what is my next steps as a creator? This is hard times, man. Like, yeah. I'm not getting work at DC and Marvel. I'm not even really trying to get work at DC and Marvel. And I think I've become a better creator. So maybe it would be at my behest to, like, to try to get work. But I also feel like I'm at that weird place where, like Frank Miller's Dark Knight, or Paul Pope's. And we've mentioned this in conversations in the past, where I'm like, well, maybe I should be an out of continuity kind of guy, where I do add my sensibility to something just to give it that little twist, that little change, that turn. I don't know. But also, but the more I do of my own stuff, the more I'm more concerned with what I'm doing versus perpetuating a company's character. Frankly, is what it's become.
I hear you, man. No, I understand, and sometimes it is that balance of do a DC or Marvel book to get the attention of the Marvel and DC reader, and then hopefully have them follow you back to your creator-owned stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, again, one of the first things of yours that I became aware of was, and we talk about it every time we talk, is your Thing story. That you did, and that was great. Also,
yeah.
What's that?
With Evan Dorkin, I had initially come up with something of an initial premise, and then I petered out, and I was hanging out with Evan Dorkin, who's a big Marvel fan, and DC fan, and he came on board and really fleshed out this really cool story. The Thing, Night Falls on Yancey Street, which back then was considered a startling story, which means it wasn't in continuity because of what happens in the story, and I did my best with my ability back then, and I'm semi proud of it. And it was a big deal, in my career at the time, because I mostly had just done alternative comics, and I think I had done a couple things with Harvey Picar, a couple short stories, little things like that,
Right.
And suddenly I'm doing this major character who's my favorite character in the Marvel universe, and yeah, that was an intense time, and so it kind of started to put me on the map, or at least people be like, who's that, what's going on over there?
Well, and again, you managed to convey a Kirby-esque sort of style, but still retaining your own style and everything. No, it's one of my favorite solo thing projects and everything. I think
Thank
it's
you.
I think it's great. Absolutely, man. No, and again, I that's the thing. I like the fact that both companies, DC with Black Label too, that no, there's a space for out of continuity stories. And yeah, I am, but by the same token, I don't want you to deny your creator-owned stuff either. So
Well, I mean, I only have so many creator-owned ideas I want to do, and like some people who are fans of my memoir type comics would actually prefer that I went back to that because they're like, oh, Chestface is cute and COVID Cop, but I want those real life stories again, and I'm trying to merge the two, which was my recent Kickstarter before Chestface was the Red Hook X Dean Haspiel, which became a speculative memoir, where in loose terms, the idea was like, what if Spider-Man became Peter Parker or Peter Picard? Where the hero is working at a bar and he's just having conversations and there's not really a fight, except the fight happens with an iteration of my character and like little things like that and shifting the goalposts and just kind of and also making it interesting for me to write and draw. To be
sure.
honest. After a while, how many times can you revisit those tropes?
Dean, I keep telling you, and it's so funny because before we started record, or maybe it was at the beginning of the conversation too, because it involved De Niro. Your godmother. I just think that's a project that's sitting on the table that
I know.
talking about Shelley Winters, man, and because she continues to fascinate me. I found that was it on Merv Griffin when she and Oliver Reed were together, and he said something that pissed her off, and she dumped a drink on his head.
Dumped a drink on his head, yeah. I think I might have told you. I was she took us to the Merv Griffin show on one of her visits.
Wow, no, you didn't tell me that.
And so I met Merv Griffin. I'm in the green room. And who's in the green room with me? With Shelley? My favorite baseball player as a kid and I met him and I took pictures with him, Bucky Dent. As a kid, he was my favorite Yankee. And I couldn't believe, out of all the days that she's going on the Merv Griffin show, there's also Bucky Dent. Unbelievable, So
Bucky Dent, the infamous home run hitter of that single day playoff game between the Sox and the Yankees that determined who was going to go on to the playoffs and everything. And I love that in Boston, after hitting that home run that upset the Red Sox dreams, whenever he'd be at the plate, the scoreboard would say BF Dent for Bucky fucking Bucky fucking Dent. BF Dent. And it's like, yep. But that's awesome, man. I love that Bucky Dent's your favorite Yankee. That's great. Did it suck for you with the series last week?
No, I couldn't even tell you who a Yankee is except some guy named Judge or something.
Yeah, Aaron Judge.
Sorry, no. I couldn't even tell you who a Yankee is today. All right, I'll tell you who my Yankees were. Ready?
Sure.
Ready? Okay. Starting with first base. Chris Chambliss, Willie Randolph, Bucky Dent, Greg Nettles. Then you had Lou Piniella, Mickey Rivers, Reggie Jackson, Thurman Munson, and you had Ron Guidry. You had Sparky Lyle. You had Goose Gossage. You had, I said Ron Guidry?
Yes.
Catfish Hunter.
Yeah.
And there might have been one or two other pitchers, and then designated hitter Oscar Gamble.
Sure. No, I had all those baseball cards. I was living that world. It's crazy, Dean. Truly, I spent like I'm trying to do the math, 89 to 2006. So 17 years covering sports in Chicago. And I was the least sports-minded guy when I actually professionally was working in sports radio. And I was there really to do more parodies and comedy stuff, sketches and parody songs and stuff. And truly, since leaving sports radio, I almost missed the Cubs World Series run. And Ryan Brown, the wonderful comic creator, and God Hates Astronauts, if you know that. And he's a massive baseball fan. And he's like, well, you got to be loving the fact that the Cubs are probably going to make it to the series. I'm like, and this was late August. And I'm like, I know they're doing well, but I'm not watching. Yeah. And he leaned in and he goes, John, they're going to probably win the World Series this year. This is something you've been waiting your whole life. I remember 1969 and I remember the disappointments of 84 and the subsequent years in the playoffs and things. And he's like, you don't want to miss this as a guy who grew up a Cub fan. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. So I watched the final regular season and I watched all the playoffs and I was
So let me ask you, the recent with the Dodgers and the Yankees, I did watch one game, or I watched the second half of it maybe. Somehow fell upon it. I think I was at a bar with my girlfriend getting chicken wings, and the game was on. And I think, or maybe it was anyway, the point is, and maybe it was the last game, but was the mess up that the pitcher didn't run to first to tag the guy out? Was that with the beginning of the?
I'll confess, Dean. Other than that idiot fan that grabbed the foul ball out of the Dodgers glove, that's pretty much the only highlight that I saw.
Never mind.
So yeah, no. Again, I mean, because like you, man, it's like and after 16 years of sports radio, I'm like, yeah, I'm done. That's enough.
Oh,
as
no,
far as
I get it.
Yeah, I can handle. Like, I like going and just getting invested in a single game, whether it's any of the major sports. I can enjoy myself, but actually following the trajectory of a team or what happens during the season, I don't care anymore. It's weird.
So let me ask you this, because you're a boxing fan, right?
I am still a boxing fan. Yes,
diehard boxing fan.
Very much.
A friend of mine, a filmmaker, is inviting me to his house to watch the Tyson, whoever the other guy is,
Jake Paul. Yeah, Jake Paul. Coming up 2 weeks away. 10 days away. Yeah.
And before we watch, there's going to be a bunch of fights before that fight, right?
Probably.
So before we watch the fights.
Yeah.
Apparently, he wants to show a Walter Hill film that was a boxing movie.
I remember I interviewed Walter about the film.
What?
Back for Sporting News Radio.
And it was called Undisputed?
Undisputed. It's Wesley Snipes and Ving Rhames. And imagine, because it's like Ving Rhames plays a champion that finds himself in jail, and they set up a fight with him and the jailhouse boxer, and that's Wesley Snipes. And Falk is in the movie. It's an attempt to do modern noir in the setting of a prison. And I appreciated what it was. I'll be interested to hear what you think of it. I think there are better boxing movies and better prison movies, but it was entertaining. It was entertaining.
All right, cool.
And the opportunity. What's that?
You got to talk to Walter Hill.
Yes, I was going to say the opportunity talking to him was amazing. And it was like, this is for radio. So, okay, yeah, we'll give you 10 minutes. And I'm like, all right. I mean, I wish I was doing the podcast then, because I would have easily gotten an hour. Well, in fact, Dean, you know what I released was Saturday on Turner Classic Movies. They reran Andy Griffith's movie, A Face in the Crowd, which is
incredible. Like, talk about modern parallels. Holy mackerel. And
it was great because Spike Lee was the guest director commenting on the movie with Ben Mankiewicz. And I had interviewed Bud Schulberg, who wrote A Face in the Crowd.
Yep.
And as you said earlier, and on the water, very good. Attaboy Dean.
Movie.
Absolutely.
My favorite movie.
One of the great New York stories. Absolutely, man. About the dock workers and everything. For people who don't know, On the Waterfront, that's where Marlon Brando had his famous, you might have heard, I could have been a contender, I could have been somebody, because he plays a washed-up fighter that's now a union buster and everything, working for the bosses and everything. Or another dock worker. But I interviewed Bud Schulberg, and also the man who wrote, again, man, sports radio. I got to meet a lot of these people, and he was a big boxing writer. And he, in fact, not only did he write Face in the Crowd, but he wrote the Humphrey Bogart film, The Harder They Fall, which was Bogart's final film, and that's a great boxing movie.
I've never seen it.
Oh, it's him and Rod Steiger, and it's so interesting because Steiger is doing your Actors Studio 50s acting style, and Bogart is doing classic Hollywood. And their characters are at odds with each other, and it's great because truly, Bogart never jumped the shark. I mean, literally was his last movie. And I even asked Bud, "Did you know he was sick at the time?" He goes, "Yeah, we knew he was sick, but we didn't think it was going to be his last movie." And it turned out that it was. But he and Steiger, it's so great. But I made 2 video shorts of my interview with Bud and put them on YouTube, put them on Instagram. One about The Harder They Fall, and one about Face in the Crowd. And I'm really happy that it seems like not only my word balloon audience is watching them, but I got a lot of new people that are maybe looking for old Hollywood little tidbits like that. But yeah, Bud was incredible, and I got to know him pretty well in the '90s and early 2000s. And a
That's amazing.
brilliant man.
Brilliant guy. And to make another little connection, you said actor studio. So I used to take my late brother to the actor studio because my godmother cast him in a play that she was directing.
Okay,
so I go to the actor studio and I hang out with Lee Strasberg, and I knew who he was then. I was old enough. I was was it junior high school, something like that.
Okay,
maybe even high school. But and then there were like actors like Michael J. Pollard, Steve Railsback, Susan Terrell.
Wow.
And Susan Terrell was in one of my favorite movies, Fat City, which I think is about boxing.
It
right?
absolutely is about boxing.
And that's based on a guy who only wrote one novel, and I forget his name right now.
Yeah, me too.
But
Stacey
written the
Keach
one
is in the
novel.
movie. Yeah, Stacey Keach is in the movie.
And Stacey Keach. Yeah.
Boy, we're name dropping left and right. When I was covering,
and I met Stacey Keach on Bored to Death because he
that's
played
great.
Jason Schwartzman's father, and I did.
Not Stacey. Pardon me. James Keach is the one that did Fat City. Not Stacey. His brother. Stacey's brother.
Stacey Keach. No, Stacey Keach is in the movie. It's Stacey.
He's in
Keach.
Fat City.
Oh yeah, he's in.
All right, then I'm misremembering. But
no. But Stacey Keach and that Chris Christopherson song, I think, was also a famous Chris Christopherson song. Mm-hmm. But it's funny because I got to meet him, but I didn't talk to him about Fat City. I talked to him about another movie. Have you ever heard of a movie called The Ninth Configuration?
I have, but I haven't seen it.
So the former title was Twinkle Twinkle Killer Kane, which is one of the best titles I ever heard. Written by William Peter Blatty, who wrote The Exorcist, who then wrote and directed Exorcist 3, and the only other movie he ever wrote and directed was The Ninth Configuration, starring Stacey Keach.
Wow.
See it. It's fantastic.
It's my God. Regarding Fat City, when I was covering George Foreman's comeback, and he came through town, or at least when I was writing for Boxing Illustrated and Ring Magazine, I would cover fights in Iowa, Illinois, and Indiana. And if there was a big fight, I would just drive to wherever. So I saw him both in Chicago and in Wisconsin for an exhibition Indiana for an exhibition. But I got to go up and talk to him many times. And one time I brought my copy of the Fat City book, and I had him sign it. And Foreman goes, "I love this book. I read this book in the 60s. And he goes, "That's really crazy." And I'm like, "Well, it's boxing. It's Fat City. You make fun of your weight, that's what he autographed for me. It was great."
Oh, that's awesome. So, all right. So do you think Tyson's going to win?
Yes, I hope so. Listen, I've really come around to accepting what Jake Paul is doing with boxing. He is an internet guy. And there are so many of these, like, even back in the 90s and 2000s, and they'd have celebrity boxing and stuff. And it's like, hey, this is a serious sport. Don't mess around in it unless you're serious. And enough of my friends within the sport are like, well, he really is trying and he really is learning. That said, he is still at such a novice level. And I saw when Mike fought Roy Jones 5 years ago, and it was an exhibition. I'm doing air quotes for the audio audience. Yeah. Nobody told Mike it was an exhibition. And he had Roy Jones in sheer panic. Now, they didn't score the fight, or they did, but it was kind of bullshit. Mike manhandled Roy. And I was really glad to see that. And based on, they're only 2-minute rounds and not 3-minute rounds. We'll see how big the gloves are. But Mike can still hit. And he got very serious about this fight and put himself in serious shape. And I'm glad, I guess he had some sort of, and he had, again, middle-aged guy. I forget what ailment that he had that they had to postpone it to a couple weeks from now. We'll see if he can sustain attack. And if he gets a clean opening, we'll see how hard Jake Paul can take a punch. Because right now, and it's okay, a lot of fighters in their first 10 fights or so, they're fighting cab drivers. They're fighting ham and eggers. They're not fighting the toughest competition because they're building up. I know, ham and eggers. That's a Stillman's Gym kind of classification. But they are. They're like, they're other, not bums, because anyone who fights I have respect for them, but they're not skilled. And Jake has either fought MMA guys or former NBA guys that are screwing around with boxing, or this level. And even Tyson Fury's nephew that he fought had a little bit more skill, and thankfully actually won a decision. If everything's legit, because when Logan Paul, Jake's brother, fought Floyd Mayweather, nobody said anything, but you could tell there was some sort of agreement where Floyd carried him, because really, and I mean also the weight and size disparity was just ridiculous.
Right.
But Mike is he's serious about this. And again,
because I was going to say, I don't know. I haven't followed his fights a lot, but whenever I've seen him, I'm like, I don't even know if he's boxing. There is a monster or something that is unleashed that I don't even think Tyson can control.
That's what I'm saying.
That's
man.
terrifying. It's terrifying.
That's what happened against Roy Jones. I mean, my favorite line in the first Rocky movie is when Rocky accidentally knocks down Apollo Creed in the beginning of the fight. And Apollo goes back to the corner, and his trainer goes, he doesn't know it's a show. He thinks it's a damn fight. And it's like, because really it was just going to be this silly little, hey, I'm letting this guy, go in the ring with the champ. And it's like, yeah, guess what? Nobody told Rocky, man. Rocky was trying. And I think you're right. I think that's the best fighters. It's all instinctive. They've been training since they were little kids. So throwing a punch, it's muscle memory. It's not. Yeah. It's the brain sees the opening and moves. Faster than their mind can even comprehend what's happening, because they've trained that way. That's why Floyd Patterson. Pardon me. I was thinking it was a different Mayweather, but no, that's Floyd Sr. Floyd Patterson, the great heavyweight champion. He fought Ali twice. He fought him in the 60s after Floyd was champ, and then in the early 70s. And after he fought him the second time, he quit, and he was still a relatively young man. And everyone's like, why are you quitting? He's like, because my reflexes can't catch up with my brain. I see the openings, but I can't get my body to respond in time. And he goes, I should have been, and especially having fought Ali once, I should have been more competitive. And I wasn't. And he goes, so no, time to go. And he was smart to quit when he did. And I think this, after Mike has been, at the end of when he was fighting actively, he was getting bored with the sport, and also personal issues. I don't know if he was drugging. I don't know if he was boozing, but he clearly wasn't taking training seriously. I think this opportunity with Jake Paul has given him new confidence, something to shoot for. And he lost like 100 pounds. I mean, he was walking around like Orson Welles, kind of portly and stuff the last few years. He's back in fighting shape. And so I'm also no disrespect to Jake Paul, but it's like, I know you think you're fighting an old man, but just like the old timers at baseball games when they do home run derby, and they, like Luke Appling, the former White Sox at 76, knocked one out of into the stands, a home run, when he was 76 years old. And I know, and talking to old fighters and old trainers, it's like, they still know how to punch. That never goes away. Even Jack Dempsey, there was a great story about Jack Dempsey walking through Central Park, and two young guys tried to mug him. And he had a cane then, and he dropped his cane. He beat them to the ground. And when the cops came, he was standing on them and going, clean this up for me. And it's like, it's Jack Dempsey, man. Come on. One of the greatest punchers of all time. And the same with Billy Conn, great light heavyweight who fought Joe Louis. He was in a 7-Eleven and someone was trying to rob it. And Billy Conn stopped the guy and knocked his ass down and everything. And it's like, they still got it. So I mean, I know it's the 50-plus-year-old guy going, I hope Tyson can still do it. I hope
that's partially what it is. It's about, like, you're feeling your age, you're getting older, you don't think you can do the things you have done before. Same thing as a cartoonist. I second guess myself as an artist. Like, in my most recent, my last Kickstarter, the way I draw is I use blue pencil so that I don't have to erase it when I ink it. I don't have to erase any lead or any kind of dark thing when I scan. But I actually, wound up making patches of different art on faces or stuff because they didn't like the way I was drawing it. And that hadn't happened in years. And I don't know why this was happening to me. I think I was not feeling confident or second guessing, or, I'm not working with editorial. I'm not working with a publisher or a team. I am the team, like I am the store. So I think I was like trying to put on an editor hat and a publisher hat and a promoter hat, and like it's a lot to consider, even though I keep encouraging, we have the tools, let's be entrepreneurs. I talked to my girlfriend the last few days about she wants to produce certain things, but I'm telling her the printer I go to, or if you want to make this kind of item or that item, and it after a while you're like, wait, I wish I was going to an office and talking to other people about it versus trying to figure all those stuff out on your own, and then really at the end of the day, you're just dealing with the response of the consumer or the reader or the fan or the friend or the family member, versus having this kind of team that has, there this veteran understanding of how things work,
Yes.
because
Yes.
we're all second guessing. I'm just second guessing. I don't know if you want, at the end of the day, I tell myself, hopefully I'm making something you didn't know you wanted. Right.
Yes.
And then take it from there,
I get it. No, absolutely. Well, if it's any comfort, I know Mignola has told me that as he's gotten more and more veteran, he's slowing down because he second guesses himself and wonders, is this the right line? Is this even down to that? So no,
Yeah.
I totally understand that. So how many days left of Chess Face's Kickstarter?
Right. So thank you. So this ends
That's
on
all right.
November 22nd, a little over 2 weeks. I am trying to figure out a stretch goal because I made my initial goal within about a week, which is awesome.
Great.
But as we know in crowdfunding, the initial goal is not the real goal. It's the one that kind of gets over the hump, right?
Sure.
And then it creates a sense of excitement. And then, people start rooting for it some more because it's winning. And then you try to get to the goal you really want. Because I am living off of this. This is, except for the few little freelance things here and there. And I do say no to certain bigger projects because I do want to focus on my autonomy. I am trying to carve a path, a lane that is the Dean Haspiel universe, whatever the hell that you want to call it. That's not ego and that's not narcissism. It's just that I've been doing this for so many years, man. I want to write and draw these comics. I have a bunch of stuff I want to do, including the plays that I've written, and speaking of plays, we can hop over to Lights Out, which I'd love to talk about.
Absolutely. Yes. Here we go, everybody. This is a project that Dean is involved with. Go on. Tell everyone what the inspiration. First, tell everyone the inspiration for Lights Out. I know it, but.
Actually, you might know more than me because Tom Akel, the publisher and founder of Rocket Ship Entertainment, when he approached me, he told me about this cool project where he's going to publish an anthology, a horror anthology, loosely based on Lights Out. I was like, what's Lights Out? And apparently Lights Out was this awesome kind of radio show in the 1930s, that had people like Boris Karloff and any name an actor back in the 1930s. They probably acted on this. And they did all these shows. And I remember as a kid listening to radio shows. And I remember the first time you learned what Orson Welles was able to pull off on the War of the Worlds radio show, where he convinced a lot of the world that there was an alien invasion actually happening, which is pretty amazing. That is so cool. And that's the power of storytelling, right? But I did used to listen to, when I wasn't listening to Dr. Ruth on my radio, I was listening to like stories happen and being performed and acted and the sound effects that made you feel like you're in real spaces. Even though you had to activate your own imagination, these sound cues would help offer that, and later on in life, after doing comics, and I'm still doing comics, is I started writing plays that were performed on stage, or I'd made a couple short films. But I have thought about wanting to do a radio play because it is so much fun, And I've written stuff that I think could be, converted into radio plays.
Sure.
And in fact, I was listening to Warren Ellis produced and wrote a 6-episode radio show called The Department of Midnight.
Yep.
I believe that's the title.
Yep.
And I don't know if you listened or not. It's great.
I have. It's
In
excellent.
fact, it scared me. Like talking about horror and how horror doesn't often scare me. It's really rare. Just like comedies don't make me laugh as much. There were some ideas in Warren Ellis' Department of Midnight that actually spooked the hell out of me. And I was like, what is happening? And that just goes to show his ability, or the
Sure.
ability of production as well, and
Both
also, go
both
ahead.
DC and Marvel are playing with audio, and God, shame on me. All right, this is where I need help from the viewers. I'm blanking on the Marvel writer with the really deep voice that's been writing Wolverine the last couple of years, because he's written a few Marvel audio things, and I know Ben maybe.
I haven't. When you say Wolverine, is there a Wolverine comic book? Or you mean?
Oh yeah. No, this is a solo, and I think it's Helverine or whatever right now, the current iteration.
Okay, so that's where.
But regardless, he has written a couple. Like he wrote an Old Man Quill story about Star-Lord that takes place in the future, like Old Man Logan.
I tried to pitch to Marvel and actually drew a design. Old Man Aunt May. And I drew Old Man Aunt May. I have it somewhere. And I actually pitched it to Marvel. They were like, yeah, that's cool, Dean. No.
Hilarious. But I know also on the DC side, there's a couple things that are on the Max streaming site. One is a Flash audio story, and one is a Batman story that takes place in the 40s. Great sound effects. And I mean, I am so just like you, man. I grew up listening to old time radio in the 70s and 80s. And also, do you remember the CBS Radio Mystery Theater?
Probably. I mean, I don't remember the name of it, but I'm
that
sure
was the guy who produced the Inner Sanctum radio show in the 70s. Tried radio again. CBS bit. He found sponsors. E.G. Marshall was the narrator, and there were these tight 40-minute mysteries that would fit in a commercial hour, and also with most of the CBS stations running newscasts and stuff. And it ran for like 10 years, 5 nights a week. Wow. And it was, I mean, they do reruns, but they made like 800 shows. It was amazing.
Did you see the recent, what's the Scorsese movie? Flowers, the
one about the Native Americans.
Yeah, the killing of the flowers.
I know what you're talking about. Yes. Something like that.
And the book actually, and I never read the book, but apparently the book is about the invention of the FBI, right?
Okay.
Through this story that happens with the Native American, which is and it's in the movie as well, but it's not the focus, right? Did you see the movie?
I have not seen the movie. I have to confess, I have not.
So
I heard it was amazing.
I loved it. The movie did a really interesting thing where it tells the story as Killers of the Flower Moon. Thank you. It tells the story. It tells this story and how the Native Americans are trying to get the law to help deal with these murders and this horrible thing that happened to them. And at the end, awesome. At the end, you know how like in a John Hughes movie, they'll go to captions and a picture of the character and say what happened in the next.
Yeah, sure.
The way they wrapped it up was a radio play with Scorsese being the lead host of the radio play.
Interesting.
And I thought it was interesting because at the time I was like, wait, why did they do it like this? And it's all a bunch of white people telling the rest of the story. And I went, oh, because at the end of that movie, in that time and era, that's how it would have been imparted through a radio play.
I'm with you. Absolutely.
And dramatizing it. And I thought, oh, that was an interesting choice.
That's really cool.
It actually kind of worked. And you see the movie for the movie, but also for that ending, I think you'll really enjoy like the weird little process that they conveyed this ending with. So.
Jiku Rojo has been helping us with information. It says it's one of Martin Scorsese's best cameos. The final shot was so bittersweet. That's all.
Absolutely.
No spoilers, but yes.
Yeah, check it out. I think you'll dig it, John.
Well,
going back to the radio play and Lights Out. So Tom told me about this, old radio show, and I have not heard it. But he also has access to remasters that they're going to be publishing with the horror anthology. Speaking of Warren Ellis, he wrote a story for it. There's a good like 6 or 7 stories are going to be in it, and including me. And one of the things that inspired me, not the radio play from the 1930s, but I feel like a lot of my stories are some of the sensibilities are very 1950s, 1960s, right? Like 1960s Marvel, 1950, on the waterfront kind of Bud Schulberg type,
Yeah.
that's where, I grew up with that stuff, or I grew up because my father showed me those movies, and those are the comic books you would go back to find out when you were reading Fantastic Four. You're like, well, how did Fantastic Four begin? Or how did, Marvel begin in 1961, and then going backwards, Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby, Stan Lee, Gene Colan, Wally Wood, oh God, who's the one with the H, Iron Man,
Don Heck.
Don Heck, like that was the original posse,
Yeah.
and
Dick Ayers.
so
Dick Ayers as well.
Dick Ayers, absolutely, and so like I'm starting, I really respect that kind of stuff. But also, so that's a part of my sensibility. But when I wanted to do a horror story, I love, Giallo. You know what Giallo is? Giallo is the Italian word for yellow. Okay.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And there was a movement, or not necessarily a movement, not anything necessarily organized, but Italian horror films and crime films from the 1960s through the 1980s. There was a very specific type of crime and horror movie called
Yes.
Giallo. Okay.
Okay.
Like Dario Argento,
And Mario Bava as
Mario
well.
Bava, Sergio Martino, and Lucio Fulci, right? And like, and it was very red and very blue, and the colors are bright, but the horror was like, the blood was like red paint, but it was very artistic and creative.
Yes.
And spooky and supernatural and surreal,
Yeah, absolutely.
And so when I did my story for Lights Out, it was a combination of like 1950s kind of like, there you go, there's a character right there, he's wearing an executioner mask, which is based on a real executioner's mask that looks like that. And I wanted it to be too small for his face, so it looks like he's wall-eyed with this forced smile painted on the executioner's mask. And I'm not going to give too much away in the story, but there's another image. But I had been working on this story for a bunch of years. In fact, I tried to pitch it to an editor when Dark Horse was publishing Creepy and Eerie. And I wound up doing a collaboration with Josh Simmons, who's a great horror writer and artist. And so we told the story for, I think it was Creepy. But I could not figure out this story. And it took me years until finally when Tom approached me and said, pitch me a story. I dusted it off. I figured it out. I sent it to him. He dug it. And then it was time to draw it. And I was like trying to do a combination of like 1950s, 1940s almost, not maybe as far back as the 30s, and then 1960s through 80s kind of Giallo to give this like limited palette, and this supernatural horror that kind of happens. So
that's great, man. No, I'm a massive fan of the Lights Out radio show that beyond the initial 30s. And in fact, sorry everybody, I always toot the Chicago horn, but Lights Out started in Chicago with its creator Willis Cooper. Then Arch Obler took over the show and continued to make these really creepy stories. There's a story, I forget what the phenomenon is, but it turns people inside out.
Oh my God.
And they did this on radio with your imagination and these amazing sound effects. And they said they took a rubber glove and they dipped it in water. And the combination of stretching that to make the reverse of them going inside out. And then they also like crunched a wicker basket to imagine the bones crushing as the guy is turning inside out. And it's one of the most disgusting things I ever heard. And this is 1940s radio. And there were a lot. There's a great Karloff episode from the 30s called Catwife, where his wife slowly becomes a werecat.
Wow.
And the woman who plays the wife, I mean, just this annoying kind of meow, like cat in pain, and she's terrible to her husband, and then she becomes this cat thing. They're great stories. And also the opening with, and I imagine you may have heard some of the radio shows to help you get in the frame of mind, but that opening with it sounds like a grandfather clock hitting midnight or whatever, and you just get this narrator going, "It is later than you think," and they would warn you. They're like, "All right, if you're we're going to tell you a very scary story, and we suggest if you're too faint of heart, turn off your radio now."
Turn off the radio.
And also there was even
and it makes people just want to listen. It just makes people want to stay. Listen, you should talk to Tom.
I'd love to have him on. Absolutely, while the campaign's going on and everything. Yeah.
I'm gonna talk to him about talking to you, but also because he also has, he's a publishing empire now, like Rocket Ship Entertainment.
And also, I just want to let everyone know for the crowdfunding, give me the platform again that it's on for Rocket Ship.
It's on BackerKit. It's on BackerKit.
Yes, BackerKit, everybody.
Let me just see real quickly. Is there a date on that? Because mine ends November 22nd.
Right.
And his started about a week later. Let me just see if I can find it. Oh, there's 29. It's like almost a month left. So
great.
A lot of people can have a chance to go check this out.
Oh no, and again, I love Lights Out. It's one of my favorite subjects, and truly, both Willis Cooper and Art Chobler were these masters of. I mean, they're scary. I just did two. They were repeats, but for Halloween week, I had a top 5 list of my top favorite radio horror shows from the 40s and 50s. And absolutely, Lights Out was part of that mix and everything.
Well, I was going to say, I think there might be, if it does well, there could be a second volume. And then I think they're releasing like 10 episodes on 5 vinyls or something, whatever. But and you have to go check out the campaign for folks to click on it. But I think there's this idea of possibly producing new shows, right? And God knows I would love to write one, or maybe even adapt my horror into one.
Sure.
But God, John, you should be the new host of Lights Out, man.
Oh, I'd love that. Oh my God, I'd love that. That would be fantastic. Oh, are you kidding me? That's like when Jordan Peele got to do the Twilight Zone for CBS streaming, and I'm like, oh man, I don't blame you, man. That's very exciting.
Oh hell yeah.
So no, I hear you. Oh, that'd be amazing. Well, also my friend Susan Eisenberg, the fantastic animated actress that plays Wonder Woman in all the Justice League cartoons. I always refer to her as the animated Amazon. Some LA producer brought back the show Suspense, which, much like Lights Out, was an anthology show that dealt more with crime, but every now and then they had, in fact, I one of my top 5 shows, they did a fantastic science fiction show called Donovan's Brain that was also made into a 50s movie called The Brain That Wouldn't Die with Lou Ayres. And it's about a scientist that tries to keep a brain alive, independent from the body, and the brain becomes so powerful that it is able through its mental ability to take over the scientist's body and commit murder and things. And it's a great thing. And Orson Welles did it on Suspense, and it was a 2-part suspense story. But no, again, audio is really great. And Lights Out, really, I mean, both Willis Cooper and Art Chobler, truly masters of horror. And even Obler in the 60s released a vinyl album that they did new versions of his old 40 shows, and that Catwife was one of them. And that's the first time I heard Catwife. And I swear to you, to everybody, I'm really glad that your buddy's doing this. And Tom is his name. What's his name? What's
Tom Akel? Tom Akel, who was my original editor on the Red Hook.
Oh, okay.
And I've known him since he used to be at MTV Geek back in the day, where they published, I think, webcomics early on, and he's a great guy, and he's really smart, and you guys should talk. Another thing I wanted to mention briefly was I also play a character called the Weasel on another radio play show called Life with Althar. Althaar, Life with Althar, which is like a sci-fi fantasy radio show, which is great, and it's produced and by Ian W. Hill and Barrett Johnson of Gemini Collision Works, and Gemini Collision Works, including Ian, who was the director of my first 2 plays, and he's also worked on my other plays in other capacities as a sound designer and all that. And it's a lot of fun for folks who like radio plays to check this one. It's pretty elaborate. There's a lot of characters, and it's bananas. So I love this kind of stuff.
Dude, I'm telling you, there's lots of free audio that is out there that are modern audio dramas, and they're killing it. I mean, the sound design is incredible. You put your earbuds in, you feel like you're just, I mean, it's the immersive experience that you hope for with sound only. And yeah, I'm absolutely I'm for all this, and I'm so glad that audio is finding a new audience, because again, I was a sucker for the classic years from the 30s to the 50s. Yeah.
Well, just like, you can spend 3 hours scrolling on Instagram or whatever, right? And that's cool. There's certain value to that, and then there's certain, like, I just killed a lot of time and I didn't watch anything substantial, but that's okay. I'm absorbing whatever, maybe getting inspired, influenced, whatever. I'm not going to totally make fun of it, and I'm guilty as charged. But also because the amount of time I spend drawing, and once I know what I need to draw, once I've figured it out, once I've written it and I've laid it out, and now I got to execute it and put it on paper, and it's going to take a bunch of hours. Put on a podcast, put like yours, put on a radio play, like, come on, conversations or theater, for the ear, it like that way. I'm my visuals, me creating the visual as an artist or whatever it is I'm working. And I understand there are certain kind of things that distract, but this isn't distracting. It's only elevating. It only adds more to your work.
Dean, growing up when I did, hearing those old time radio shows, I would sit there and go, man, I wish I grew up during and was an adult for the heyday of radio prior to television. But thank God there is this revival now. And if I had the wherewithal, I have a dozen ideas that I would love to commit to audio drama.
Absolutely.
And I need to clone myself so I can do everything that I want to do. But also, as radio contracts and less, radio has just, since joining radio my first job was 1985 when I was still in college, working downstate Illinois in Bloomington, Illinois. But it's focus grouped itself to death, where other than talk and music, there's just not room on radio. Well, guess what, everybody? Here's the internet, and here's Audible and audiobooks. And now all of a sudden there's this new revival of audio drama. And I'm so happy, because it requires your imagination to fill in the visuals. And that's great. And it's exciting. God, Phil Lamar from Mad TV, and wonderful actor, wonderful comedian.
I love Phil.
And as you know, massive nerd, massive comic book reader.
And the sweetest guy, the nicest guy, man.
It blew my mind when I approached him for coming on Word Balloon, and he's like, "Oh yeah, John, I've heard your show." He goes, "I'm a big comic book guy," and I saw him face to face at one of the Terrificons in Connecticut, and I'm like, "Phil, I don't know if you remember me." He's like, "John, I just heard your rerun of Neil Adams. Of course, I remember you." And I'm like, "Okay, great, never mind, fantastic." But he's in a great Audible that people can get, and it's a Sherlock Holmes thing. And it's really, the focus is Moriarty, and he plays Sherlock Holmes as the bad guy, as the antagonist.
Wow.
And Moriarty is kind of a misunderstood guy, and Sherlock Holmes is this dogged, kind of Javert, kind of Les Miserables kind of cop that, nothing will stop me from getting this guy. And it's great. It's great.
Awesome.
So, and I keep trying to get him back to talk about it and some of the other audio things, because he's a big. Obviously, he was Static in the cartoon and everything. He's a great actor. He's a wonderful animated actor. But I love.
He got his head blown off in Pulp Fiction.
Marvin, exactly. I know, that's what I tell the normies when I talk about. They're like, "Yeah, I don't know." I'm like, "Well, he was on Mad TV." I'm like, "He's Marvin, the guy who gets his head blown off in Pulp Fiction." "Oh yeah, that guy." It's like,
Great voice and a great guy and so talented. Yeah. And again, like you have a great voice. You should be doing radio dramas. Come on, you know that.
Again, man, I heard all these wonderful announcers from the golden age, and I think probably as my voice deepened when I got older, I kind of trained myself to talk the way that I talk. I mean, I lose a little bit of my Chicago accent and not have it as, "Hey, how you doing?" Nice,
Hey.
Like Sal, like our buddy Sal Abenati. I mean, Sal's quintessential Chicago. Sounds like a Chicago alderman whenever I see him. "Hey, Jan, how you doing, Jan? Over by there. Nice." But no, I'm so thrilled that you're involved with this. And again, what's the title of your story?
So the title I have is it's called "To Have and to Hold," and it's pretty gruesome and pretty brutal. And I don't want to give much away. It's hard to come up with a pitch for this one because it was a complicated story to craft, to be honest. And I think it works. I know that Tom liked it, and a couple other people have seen it and read it have liked it. Although they're like, they look at me differently. That's fair. Why not? Um, but I also think that's what we're supposed to do, is to kind of provoke, and push play.
That's the word. You got it, Dean. Provoke people. Yes. Make them think. Make them notice that, wait a minute, something that isn't normal is happening here. No, that's a hallmark of your stuff, dude. And I understand, and that's why I'm happy to help you promote these things like Chessface, everybody.
And I always appreciate not only our conversations, but that you do promote me, because I need allies. We need to help each other out, man.
Well, we do, Dean, and we always have, and truly, it means a lot. And really, man, when I think about it, we've been talking a long time. Next year's my 20th anniversary.
Wow, doing Word Balloon 20 years. Wow, man. And wait, so you quit sports after 17. How did 3 more years creep in on comics for you?
Well, my sports radio years were 92 to 2000. So yeah, 2009.
I think you said 9.
17 years. Yeah, I guess whatever. But and I started Word Balloon in 2005.
Okay.
When I was still working at Sporting News Radio, but that last year at Sporting News Radio, then from 2005 to 20, for those 15 years, I had a day job in radio, making commercials and working for other stations. My last full-time radio job, I was a traffic reporter for CBS Radio locally. And unfortunately, with COVID, I got downsized. And so, again, Word Balloon's kind of been my main concern. And thankfully, the audience followed me, and they support me in the best way,
And I'm so glad that they do, and that we have you. You're the go-to when I think about, there are a lot of, and I've been talking to other podcasts, and
of course
I'm talking on Thursday with the pop culture guys, Bob Harrison and Mike Gold. I love those guys.
Oh, well, yeah, sure.
That's a good conversation.
Yeah, they're good guys.
You're like the WTF of comics, or whatever, or whatever.
I'll take it. Mark Maron, sure. I'll take
even
it.
Bigger than, but everyone knows Mark Maron, so it's like an easy.
I accept it. It's hilarious. Before he was canceled, people would call me the Charlie Rose of comics.
Oh, and the Charlie Rose.
And then and then all of his harassment stuff came up, and I'm like, why don't you call me the Jon Stewart of comics? Maybe that's better.
Jon Stewart, there you go. There you go. That's good. But no, man, and I don't know, man. I think what you need to do, maybe. Well, first I was going to make a comparison. Heidi McDonald.
Yeah.
20 years this year. 20 years of the beat.
I know.
And I remember when she was an editor at Disney and
then
at Vertigo, and then she got downsized or whatever, and then it was like, you know what? She carved her own lane. That's where you're at, man. You
got
earned
it, buddy.
You deserve it,
Well, that's and that's why I truly feel a kinship with people like yourself that are doing creator-owned comics. We're all doing our own thing. Another podcaster, I won't name him, and he's like, "Well, podcasting isn't creative." I'm like, "You're nuts! It's very creative." And I am very proud of what I do. And I'm like, no, I'm sorry. I do think there needs to be a small bit, certainly not on the scale of storytelling that you guys do, but we're doing our own thing. And also, again, in my mind, I was generating interview stuff to get a better radio job when I started Word Balloon. Then it became its own thing. And now, as I said, radio, much like broadcast, like over-the-air television too, they're like rats in a maze. They only know one way through the maze. And they bang their head on the walls anytime they try to deviate from that. And the great thing is, I always refer to the online content as citizen media, and that was my phrase for it. It didn't catch on, but that's okay. But but essentially, don't wait for that opportunity from a broadcast entity. Do it yourself, but have a point of view. And present something that maybe isn't being presented at the very least in the same way that you're doing it. And that's why truly your comics are very unique that way, and it's your voice. And what I do with Word Balloon is my voice and everything. So,
Absolutely.
and now, like I started to say, I'm making these video shorts because I was
Right.
listening. I listen to and I watch Bill Maher. I don't always agree with him,
Right,
but I
right.
do appreciate his shows. And
Absolutely.
on his video on his HBO show, he was talking one night, and he's like, the average person under 30 doesn't want to watch a video that's longer than a minute. TikTok,
Right.
that kind of generation. That's
Right.
what's happened. But from an audio standpoint, later on his podcast, he had one of the Vice reporters on with him. And I guess that person is going to start doing an audio podcast on Bill's audio network. And the Vice reporter said, yeah, people want 1 minute long videos and 2 hour long podcasts. And I'm like, welcome to Word Balloon. I'm like,
Wow.
and it's true, just like you said earlier, when you're intensely involved. And the greatest compliment I get is just like what you said, but also a lot of people that are in these tough 9-to-5 jobs where they're just, literally, I had a guy who his job is he puts roofs on buildings and houses and stuff.
Right.
And he's like, man, I got to tell you, that's a job that I'm just out there doing manual labor for 8 hours. Exactly. And he goes, I get to escape listening to a 2-hour conversation on Word Balloon. And I'm like, wonderful. I'm really glad I could be there for you. That's great. So
and I really truly appreciate Word Balloon, all the podcasts, the Bill Burrs, everybody, because as much as I love music, after all, I'm like, I don't want to listen to music right now. I want to listen to people talking in the room with me, and when I'm late at night and I'm alone at the studio, because my studio mates have, children or whatever, or have home life, I get it.
Sure.
And I don't, and my girlfriend's working away and I'm working away or whatever. There's a lot of people that late night shift, let's call it, this is where you guys come in and you help me feel less alone.
Well, that means a lot, Dean, truly. And I love that we've been friends this long. You know how much I love one of your studio mates, Whitney Matheson.
Whitney Matheson's awesome.
Well, she's always been on my side, and that meant a lot, especially in the formative days of Word Balloon. It's nice. It's always nice when a media critic gets what you do, and I always appreciated that about Whitney. So,
and she wanted to say hi because she knew I was talking to you. I meant to say, Whitney says hello.
There you go, man. No, that's great. Hey, we should play trivia again sometime.
Let's do it, man. I'm down.
Well, that's why everyone that's listening, Dean wanted to come on with a couple other creators that also have crowdfunding things happening, and I'm like, well, I don't want to. I'd feel bad, and I'd think, well, Dean got to talk about his thing for 20 minutes, and Creator B got to talk about his for only 15. I'd feel bad in those situations, but we could always do I love doing big bullshit shows, and weren't you on? I know, we were talking about how, like, for Baltimore, we put together a couple multi-creator just conversations, and you moderated one, and also the Benson sisters and Tom King arranged this 4-hour marathon. Weren't you guys on it early on? I don't know if you were or not.
I believe, was that during COVID or something, right?
Yes.
So I think I absolutely was, and
I was embarrassed. They called it John Con. In fact, that's right. In the upper corner there, that was the logo that.
There it is. That's right.
That Franco made for me. And and it was so great because I really, beyond my friends showing up like you and the Bensons and everyone else that showed up, that's when I met Chris Cantwell. That's when I met Vita Ayala for the first time. And these wonderful, people that are involved in comics now and stuff. And it's like, oh, that's great. And, I love it. So I love the opportunity of doing what I call fuck around shows where it's like, we're just having a conversation. If you want to promote, great. But really, in fact, Allison Baker and I are arranging. We wanted to do it for Halloween, but she got busy. I wanted to do a conversation about the best made-for-TV horror movies of the 70s, because when we were kids, there were scary fucking movies that they made on ABC.
Trilogy of Terror, probably
the original Salem's Lot miniseries.
Oh, what's the one where? Help me out here. She's English. She was on Dynasty.
Joan Collins,
and it's a Christmas story, A Christmas Horror.
I don't know.
Oh, come on. You don't
That's
know this
great.
one?
No, but
Oh
there
my
were
God.
tons of them. I mean,
And it was like an anthology movie, and I think it was a TV movie, and it's so creepy. If you ever type in Joan Collins Santa Claus horror, and it's horrific. It's
sure.
pretty spooky, you know.
Well,
So
there was that Robert Culp movie called Spectre that Gene Roddenberry produced, where it was kind of like a modern day Sherlock Holmes fighting a demon cult. John Hurt was one of the bad guys, and Gig Young, it was one of his last performances, and he was like his Dr. Watson, Robert Culp's Dr. Watson. And it's a great movie. And again, what I really wanted beyond the fact that and in the case of Trilogy of Terror, I don't think you can get it on YouTube, but I wanted obscure ones that, by the way, I mean, not the greatest quality, but if you want to watch the movie, it's sitting on YouTube. So I love this, and we're going to do it. We'll do it in November, but that's why if Tom wants to come on and talk about Lights Out, I'm sure he's got stuff like that as well. But the original Night Stalker, the pilot.
I was going to just say Night Stalker. I was going to say Night Stalker, of course.
Come on, man. Darren McGavin chasing a vampire in Las Vegas.
I mean,
you had me at a low. Yeah, good Lord. And by the way, I was going to say real fast, that's another example of a serious horror movie that had a lot of comedy in it.
Oh, yeah.
McGavin was hilarious on all those Night Stalkers, and just the dealing with the bureaucratic red tape. You mean to tell me there's a zombie running around Chicago and nobody's going to talk about it? It was fantastic. Right. What were you going to say? Forgive me, Dean.
I was going to say, I just looked it up, and it's Tales from the Crypt, 1972. Joan Collins. I think it's a TV movie, but I could be wrong. It could have been theatrical. I'm not sure.
G. Corojo is here saying.
There you go.
Yeah,
Christmas Easy Comic Story and All Through the House, right? Now, was that a TV movie or was that a theatrical release?
I'm pretty sure it was a TV movie because obviously Creepshow was filmed. Creepshow was a feature film. And it depends because truly there are some that were features and then went to TV early on. But I mean, they're great. They're great.
Film directed by Freddie. It's an anthology film consisting of 5 separate segments. So there's 5 stories. I can't tell if this was a made for TV. Anyway, when you see it, you feel like, it could have been in the theater, but it probably was for TV because it was a little TV budget, if that makes sense.
Well, I'll give people a preview. One that I'm going to talk about is called The Devil's Triangle, and it's all about the Bermuda Triangle. And listen to this cast. It's Kim Novak.
What?
The infamous Doug McClure. And and the wonderful Alejandro Rey from The Flying Nun. And and it's this great demon possession movie that happens in the Bermuda Triangle. It's creepy as hell. That creepy as hell.
And a quick little 2 things about Kim Novak.
Please. Love her.
So my dad knew her.
Wow.
Another blonde bombshell because my dad knew Marilyn Monroe.
Wow.
So if you look up James Haspiel,
what did your dad do? What did your dad do that he was in these circles?
He just showed up. He was a 16-year-old when he met Marilyn.
Wow.
And if you look up James Haspiel, Marilyn Monroe, she's kissing him on his cheek, So check out my dad. He knew Marilyn. He's written some books on her, but he also knew a lot of other famous blonde bombshells. So that's one thing on Kim Novak. The other thing, and this is hearsay, okay? But apparently, the reason why Sammy Davis lost his eye, you've heard this.
Go on, tell the story.
Dating Kim Novak, and they didn't want him dating Kim Novak anymore, so they took his eye out.
That's the rumor. Yes, Harry Cohn of Columbia Pictures, who had Kim Novak under contract, and really, Sammy could have been career ending, and that's why it was suggested forcibly. You better marry a woman of your own kind right away. And he did have this marriage that lasted a couple of years. That totally was a marriage of convenience, just to really allow him to continue to make movies and be the incredible entertainer that he was. No, poor Sammy. That guy went through the ringer. My God. I mean, beyond the obvious of being a wonderful black entertainer at the pre-civil rights era, and of course the bumpy early years. That they did that American is it called American Masters, the PBS show.
Oh, okay.
Great 2-hour documentary about Sammy's career.
Right.
And man, that guy, I mean, he did himself he always stuck to his own personal beliefs. Like he liked Richard Nixon.
Yeah.
And to be a black man in the late 60s and early 70s liking Richard Nixon, not a popular position. And they have footage of him at a live concert where the audience is, and it's a predominantly black audience, booing him, and he turns them around. And he's like, fine, that's okay. I appreciate your opinion. Appreciate mine. And then he sings, whether I'm right or whether I'm wrong, I got to be me. And they go nuts. And he totally turns around this booing audience to cheering him. And it's like, that's Sammy, man.
And he was part of the Rat Pack, right?
Of course. Absolutely.
So, and my friend, Doug Broad, just wrote a book. It's his second book called Born with a Tale. And it's about Anton LaVey,
the Church of Satan.
Church of Satan, right?
Yes.
In the book, he talks about Sammy Davis Jr.,
who
was Church of Satan adjacent. Like, did he really believe in all that voodoo, whatever? But he was also a part of that. So, and he's a guy you should have a talk with because Doug is
I'd love that. Oh man, again,
and talk about this new book of his, So.
Well, no, I'd love that because truly. Because it's funny because Allison about the horror movies, she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry we missed Halloween." I'm like, "We can talk about this any time of year." Sven Gulli is a good friend of mine, the horror host, the TV horror host, and I've known him for years, and it just blows my mind that we are friends. And he's like, "John, I can't be on during Halloween." I'm like, "Rich, that's like me asking Santa Claus, can you do a show during December?" It's not going to happen. Right. I understand that, but I'm like, Rich, we can talk any time of the year. Right. So I would say the same thing. But mentioning Anton LaVey and Sammy, all right, here's another movie, everybody, and actually should probably be on my list. You can find it on YouTube. It's called Poor Devil. And if you know It's a Wonderful Life and things like that, it was an attempt at a pilot, and Sammy is a demon working for the devil, and he's trying to collect souls for the devil. And Jack Klugman is the guy that he's going after. And Christopher Lee in the movie plays the devil, and it's hilarious in the movie, but it's a comedy. And also, I heard in the last couple of years, Eddie Murphy talking about having a dinner with Sammy Davis and him go, Satan, man, is a lot more powerful than people realize. And that he's having this dinner. He's like, yeah, okay, Sam, whatever. Tell me more about Frank and Dean. I don't give a shit about the devil.
That's hilarious.
But yeah, oh no, it's and in fact, Hillary Barta for when you were talking about Creepy and Eerie, they had those Twisted Tales or whatever section of Creepy and Eerie, and for the modern version, Hillary did a thing about Anton LaVey. And absolutely, one of the panels, there's Sammy as one of his acolytes. I think a lot of people felt that Sammy joined the Church of Satan mostly for the orgies, which cracks me up.
Probably, and he was
Hey,
Jewish.
Man. Hey, man, there's incredible tale here. I know they worship Satan, but I'm in, man.
What a character, man. And what he had to face as a black man back then, and the dance he had to do just to carve his own lane. Right. Speaking of carving lanes, oh my God, Sammy Davis Jr. Come on,
and he could do it all. God, I went back and saw some footage of him from either the 50s or early 60s doing impressions, and he could sing like Nat King Cole.
Wow,
it was frightening. He sounded just like Nat King Cole, and he did an amazing Bogart. And I mean, he's in that. He did a Rifleman episode where he's twirling a 45. Like your favorite cowboy. I mean, and also I always love Sweet Charity is kind of a dated movie. Bob Fosse movie. Shirley MacLaine's the lead. Ricardo Montalban is in the film and stuff. But there's a hippie church called The Rhythm of Life, and Sammy is the lead guy. If he's not the preacher, I don't know. But it's this like fantastic 6-minute dance scene from like 1969, and it's Sammy at his best. And again, it's something you can find everybody on YouTube. And it's him singing and dancing this wonderful number in this musical. And he's the man. He was the man. He was brilliant. Dean, I love where all this went today. I really do. I love
We
this,
went
and
all
that's
over
why
the place.
I knew we would, and I knew we
We
would.
can't help ourselves, right?
But repeating, everybody, Chest Face, the
Yes.
Kickstarter is active now, and
Yep.
it's active till November 22nd. A fantastic noir story from Dean about this strange monster who is involved with some sort of conspiracy, and it's a great noir comedy that
Thank
I
you.
think will really entertain you. And then, of course, the Lights Out uh, thing that's happening now
It's an
through
anthology that comes with there. I guess there are different levels of commitment to this idea, and it's on Backer Kit. And yeah, I'm on 2 Kickstarters right now, my own plus this one I contributed to, and I'm sure I'll be involved in some others because that's with the way the world is going right now. So
Sure.
and speaking of which, don't forget to vote, people. Right.
I voted on Friday. I waited in line for 2.5 hours. It was totally worth it. I feel relieved that I avoid. I mean, I would have done it on Tuesday as well, but it's like, hey,
Sure. Sure.
let's get it done. And yeah, I hear you. This is an important election, everybody. Please, and again, I even without getting partisan, don't let yourself be a spectator. Really be involved.
No, be involved. And a weird thing happened to me. Like I remember when I didn't even remember who the president's name was, and they would show up twice a year on your TV, right? Like I remember that, and I kind of missed that, to be honest. But when I was, scratching in the little black circle and shoving it through the thing to be, I actually got emotional and started crying. I don't know why. Yeah, it was like because it's so intense right now, and I even though I ignore as much as possible because I can't, and all I can do is kind of vote in one direction or the other.
Certainly.
And I did, and I thought this is me. This is the way I can fight.
No, I hear you, man.
Boxing, there is no boxing. So voted by absentee, absolutely. Whatever we can do, and I know that my mom in Florida is out knocking on doors, not telling people what to do necessarily, but tell them to vote. Just vote. Everyone vote, okay? I don't want to hear you complaining after. It's going to be tough anyway, as is, okay? But vote, okay?
Well, and also it's embarrassing because, and as I've heard in the last couple of days, we're democracy and we're lucky that we have that privilege of voting. And some people treat it as a right and will ignore it because it's something that they think is a given. It really isn't. And think of the other wannabe democracies that are fighting to have the opportunity that we have because of the Constitution and because of our laws. And we don't want to see that go away. We really don't want to see that go away. And that we, at best, sometimes of the eligible voters might be like in 20, that was a very involved election, but only 2/3 of eligible voters still voted even in 20. And it's like, it's like you really need to do it. You need to be involved. And again, without us even giving an opinion, just vote, really vote, know.
So anyway, that's how we'll wrap this up. And thank you so much for this conversation.
Loved it, buddy.
And we'll do it again. Thanks. What's Jicorijo? Or
I always say Jicorojo, but I'm sure I get it wrong, and he's always patient with me for mispronouncing his name. But yeah, he's a word balloon regular, and we have other people that are watching and liking our conversation. I'm really glad everybody is enjoying it. And thanks everybody. Absolutely. So I recorded this Emma Rios conversation that'll come out after Dean's show posts, and then also, like I said, on Thursday I'll be talking to Elliot Magan about his new book, Citizen Lex.
Does he not say the S anymore?
Well, yeah, I figured S. Again, you need
Elliot S. Magan
with the exclamation point next to the S. No, he's one of my favorite Bronze Age writers, and it tickles me that he comes back. Him and Jerry Conway. It's like I can't believe you guys keep coming back and listening to my bullshit because I've been reading you guys since before I was 10 years old. So it really means a lot. And yeah, we're gonna have a lot of fun talking about his new book. If you've never read Last Son of Krypton or Miracle Monday, Elliot got the rights to those back. He sells them on his website. I'm sure it'll come up in the conversation. And that's why I'm excited for this third book that he's playing with in the Superman universe called Citizen Lex. So that'll be the next Word Balloon Live on Thursday. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy.